Right, so here we're entering into the second to last turn. Guaranteed. Could have been the last turn, but highly unlikely. 45, 46. Things look grim for the Germans. They only have one production. They got their flag. The Russians grabbed a flag, didn't take a penalty for it. Kind of a risky move, but they're looking at, we are behind the fascists right now, so we've got to do something. And we'll probably be behind the Allies if they start doing well. There's pretty much no way the Russian flag is at the same place, or victory points are at the same place the democracies are. There's a possibility they could come in last if they don't do anything. If they can move, maybe they can gain second place or even take a shot at first. Although that seems unlikely, but with 2 turns it's possible. They have a big army all geared up. And they've got a lot of work towards the declaration of war, but without a flag they're not going to be able to get it. So unless something happens. It's looking pretty iffy for the fascists as a whole. You're seeing the French are pulling the Ruhr marker in. That's going to allow them to also get offensives off of it. The Italians doing the same thing, pulling Rome in. They're the only ones in total war. They're going to get a lot of production off that. I don't know what that's going to do for them. Tanks aren't terribly helpful to them right now. They're in the middle of the mountainous terrain. Air support might be the better option, but who knows. The U.S. The U.S. is not in a good position. However, the Washington Naval Treaty is done because, and it should have been done earlier, because the Allies launched their attack. Now, I don't think dissolving it did anything interesting. If Japan dissolves it unilaterally, this is a provocation, but otherwise, it does not. And the reason it's been removed is the Brits are now a belligerent, having declared war on the Axis in Europe. So the U.S. can do things like deploy to the Philippines for whatever that's worth, and I'm not quite sure what that's worth. They have tons and tons of production. However, they haven't made it up to mobilization yet, so they're not really in the best of positions to do anything. I think people can go up to total war at this point. Again, so many, special rules without a lot of meat overall, right? I mean, the game's meat is sort of the special rules. I'm not saying that other grand strategics don't have probably as many special rules, but they have a lot more going on. A lot more of the game is spent not trying to find those special rules. So, yeah, I'll have to try to find wherever the fuck that is in here, which is not easy for me. What is it I'm looking for? Whether or not you can upgrade, yeah. So that's going to be a political action, probably, but it may be somewhere else. Power may not increase the total war, but may only if it's belligerent or we're in global war, and we're in global war. So yes, the U.S., well, other powers like Japan could go forward. But that's a provocation to people. May not want to do that, may not want to involve the U.S. into this war if we can help. The U.S. can get involved in it, though, at least in the European war. And they could just declare war on Japan as well. So it kind of depends on how the chips fall. Not sure what else to say. I know there was something I wanted to say, but I don't know quite what it is. I don't have a strategy in mind right now for any of the powers, really. I mean, the Allies in Europe, yeah, crush Germany. The Russians, not so obvious. Crush Germany might be good, but what if we get Germany and Italy? That's 2 two powers gone, that I believe triggers the win conditions, which is sort of a special rule of its own. It's not something you have to check as often, but you really, like, in most games it's kind of obvious who won the war or whatever, but this doesn't have that. This has, and it's similar to things like unconditional surrender, it has funky victory conditions that are intended to kind of provide a balance to the game. So just because the Axis wins here doesn't mean that Japan will be allowed to maintain its empire in China indefinitely. All it means is they won the game. You know? So you could end up with a decisive victory that's clear, like the historical, actual war has a decisive victory. Most historical situations have one. The game doesn't support that directly. The game has its own gamey mechanism in order, to support the balance of the actual powers in play. Germany in World War II, no matter what, they are not World War I Germany. They are not really a threat to take on all of Europe. Russia's a bigger power in the long run. The US is a much bigger power in terms of the economic capabilities that it has. Japan, not a chance in hell of standing against the US, period. Could they stand against Britain alone? Yeah, that's a more interesting fight, but honestly, the Japanese goals in this are something a little weird. So you've got to try to balance the World War II situation in a way that maybe you don't have to balance World War I. Now, there are ways that this game could end decisively. If you're seeing surrenders by major powers, that is a pretty good indication that it did end decisively. And historically, you ended by this date, this turn, with a decisive Allied victory where, well, yeah, I think so. Because the Russians did not gain that much. They gained a lot in Europe. They did not gain much in the Pacific map. However, there aren't a lot of Allied cubes here. And honestly, other than the surrender of Japan, which wouldn't give cubes for non-conquered territory, there really aren't a lot of victory points for the Allies over here either, except they held on to everything. I don't know that they got Java back. I don't believe so. That's the only victory point, and they didn't take anything in China. So yeah, they're kind of coming out with a draw here. So yeah, I'm not sure which side would have won. You can kind of count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 victory points for Russia. 8, 9. I think the Russians win. Italy. 1, 2, 3, 4. Call it 5, 6, 7. So yeah, I would say probably actually the Russians did win this game if you try to count up the victory points. Looking at what happened in World War II, and that's kind of interesting. I thought they wouldn't because hey, they don't get any of the victory points in the Pacific, but neither do the Allies. Unless something funky happened. Let's see. I'm trying to think if there's any alliances. Well, you have a couple of British points over here. So that actually probably puts the Allies at least in a tie, if not in the lead. So yeah, I mean, the historical situation ends up in a kind of balanced situation. There's no guarantee in this game that the Axis, is going to be at war with both the Soviets and the democracies, though. I could see this thing turning kind of in a weird situation. It's hard not to, though. It's just, unless Russia focuses on destroying Japan, I don't think that you're going to see a situation. The Western allies are not in a position to screw with the Soviets very easily over on this map. So they're all going to be poised if the game goes long enough like it did here to hit the fascists. If Germany goes into Russia first, France is going to hit them. If Germany goes into France first, that's a tempting target for Russia eventually, you know. But maybe the German garrison is big enough that they take a different approach. It's all possible. And it's really hard to wrap your head around everything that's possible. I don't know where I am anymore. The old mouth is running too far. So yeah, we're trying to figure out the actual builds that we're going to throw and what's going to go on there. And that all has to do with strategy. Obviously, Britain and France are going to be focusing on what they can do to Germany and or Italy at this point. There's something we haven't seen, and I want to just detail it out. France chose to take the Ruhr effect. Maybe it's not a wise idea. They've got this left over from last turn. These are their resources. Some of their resources are industrial. Actually, they should have another resource, because the Ruhr is also worth an industrial resource. So we may not be taking this, because I think it's unlikely Germany's going to be getting it back. I was initially going to take it, but I think not. So here's the thing. I spend this at commitment, or at mobilization. I get 2 builds. There's my airplanes. I'm out of builds. Until I get up to total war, I'm not getting anything more. So that means these 2 convert to offensives, unless I want to kick one till next turn. And I've got 2 offensives that come into me for Paris and the Ruhr. Provence doesn't produce one because it is not an industrial resource. So I've gotten everything I can get with France without taking that Ruhr resource. If I thought it was in danger, I might burn it just for the sake of burning it. But now I can burn it to gain an offensive marker, or whatever they're called, operations marker. I don't know what the hell they're called. I think they're offensives. In order to gain an offensive marker for if I go to total war, which I may well. My stability is pretty good. All right, that kind of decision making has to go with everyone. And some countries like the US have to try to figure out what they're planning on doing to get themselves in this war. Because if they don't get in this turn, I know how this works. They're not going to be able to capture the entire Pacific in one turn very easily. Even with all those chits. They have a whole boatload of chits, offensives. Things are a little different. The naval treaty's gone, which means I can base out of the Philippines. The Japanese have not taken that. You know, Japan has the boost, and they may start the war. That's an iffy proposition, but it may be their best move at this point. The U.S. still isn't at mobilization. They're just not as powerful. Now, they can put down one hell of a navy, though. That's the problem. Hard choices across the board for the purchases. So this is what I think the Italians have. I don't think they had a counter in here. I'm not sure. Maybe they did. Shit. I shifted things back. It looked to me like if I spent everything, I could get everything. So I think they had, no, they didn't have a resource left over. They would have had to, right now they have one resource from Italy and they're firing the Roman resource off. Those resources allow them to get 3 stuff. So they could get, I think the air factor is more important. They could get 3 resources for this payout. Okay. Now, I'm leaving this one here. Yeah, this is how it worked. I get 2 free offensives, one for Rome and one for the other industrial site they have. Those I'm getting. I'm still, they're not assigned yet, but those I'm getting for free. I could use this and grab another offensive, or I could grab the armor produce. I actually think another offensive is the best thing to do. I was thinking the other way, but I'm changing my mind. I'm not gonna grab that tank yet. I can always build it off an offensive if I want to, and then still have an action left, which is better than producing only that out of everything. So that's aligning them. And I've got to make this kind of choice with every country. How can they best utilize their points? I haven't necessarily been good at making the planning for a turn, and I don't know that I'm doing any better here, but at least I'm putting a little bit more thought than I have been, which I think is absolutely necessary in this game. Oh boy, the US decision is hard. And here's the thing, we ended up in a situation that I don't think the Allies are in a bad place from. And I don't feel like the fascists are necessarily, or the Axis powers are necessarily in a bad place either. If they can hold out, it's great. They're winning. If they can't hold out for the next 2 turns though, they're in trouble. And so how do we make them be in more trouble? Well, for the US, my thought is, oh, gotta declare war. I'm not sure we really want to. It's maybe more important to get an offensive first in order to deploy my forces. Maybe it's more important to fire off mobilization first, except I've got this stupid declaration of war here, in order to be able to actually get a reasonable number of acts every time that I make a move. There's a lot in play here, and I don't know what the answer is. And then the Japanese could always say, you know what? Unfortunately, I am out of range, I think, because Hokkaido is its own little space here, which is where I can launch the surprise attack from. I don't know what a surprise attack against 2 carrier fleets is going to do. This is a powerful US buildup for just in rearmament. So I really don't know. The strike could get me the Philippines though and grab some of this shit, which is not necessarily a bad thing. So I'm looking at, hey, do the Japanese want to just start the war here instead of the US? Now, the US can't base its decision on the Japanese decision because they don't know it. But they have to take that into account. We might not be getting the deployment there. If we're not getting the deployment there, well, a flag in mobilization or increased commitment is still a good thing. It wastes my cube here, but that's okay. The Japanese are doing that cube anyway. Otherwise, it's hard to tell what the hell they're going to do. I've got to get myself in a position where I can defeat the Japanese and defeat them in force. And that, it's not clear how that's going to happen. Now, the Japanese, I don't believe, are taking either of these because they have all their carrier upgrades already. It could help to have one, but we'll wait till we take some losses maybe. And their air units, you know, they only have 1 left. They're able to build this and still keep an offensive in mind. And that might be sufficient for them. Naval treaty's gone, so I could deploy somewhere else. I really have a tough time, though, grasping what to do here. You know, what's effective and what's not. I've played through it a couple of times, and I still don't really know. At this point, the counters become exceedingly important, and I'm going to go through each country and explain where they're at with the counters and what they've chosen. Oh, I haven't chosen everything. Britain is fine stability-wise. I'll put an offensive down. Germany's not fine offensive-wise or stability-wise, but they need their tank upgrade to improve their defense of Berlin. Okay. Let's start with the French. So the French have bought everything that they have because they still got all their offensives. That's great. What do they store? They're storing a plane. With all those offensives, we're likely to draw some. We feel like we're outnumbered air-wise, and we're going to have trouble gaining anything or defending our territory or whatever. No matter what, we need more planes. At least we have this to help us defend the Ruhr, but it's not enough. Okay, great. Italy. Italy made the choice to build an extra infantry, which they definitely wanted, but also the air upgrade. It'll give them more hits on air power, which will give them more dice, which will make it more likely that they win combats, so maybe they don't need the tanks as much, and it's not like they don't have some hits for tanks. What they have to do is cause hits on the enemy because they're seeing themselves as an offensive power, at least until the Russians come in. As many offensives as we can get. We'd like to knock France out if we can. Maybe we can push them out and get something cool out of it. Next one up is the US. You can see the US, no need for carriers anymore. We got them all built until mobilization goes up and we can get more. So we took everything that we could. We took a tank upgrade because, well, we've got a ton of these. And getting one more didn't seem shit. 2 more. Screw that. I forgot we're on 1-to-1. It would take 2 offensive to get that. So yeah, we're just going with pure offensives. Oh, and Italy and the US put their flags in here. Italy because they need, or want to increase their stability before they face the home front test. Not that they're in any particular risk, but still. The US flag is there to declare war when we're ready. We're not ready yet. We want to deploy to here first. So we're going to get one of our offensives first. We don't think we need those upgrades. If we're declared war on, well, we'll be able to go to mobilization. And, geez, do I have everybody marked right? Yeah. And I don't know what else. Maybe ally with the Western allies. And that doesn't really help us too much unless we want to base in Indonesia or Indochina or something. Next toy is the Ruskies. The Ruskies' main goal is to declare war, so the flag is there. They've got a couple of pluses. They're going forward with it. Their stability is not great. Their chances aren't, well, with those pluses they are. And they took an extra tank upgrade because we're going to take some losses and some mobilization markers. We're hoping somebody triggers us. It may not happen, though. Because once we're belligerent, Germany and Italy are not going to trigger us anymore, and it's going to be harder to move forward. We will get more offensives next turn. We'll get a lot more next turn, but yeah. And we don't have any temporaries or anything to burn, so it's not a perfect situation, but we're hoping to do what we can. Japan. Japan's goal: get another troop, expand into China or wherever as much as possible. We got a couple of flags. Maybe we can get into Java. We don't want to necessarily provoke the US. We'd like to keep the US out of the war if we can. What this does, though, is it means the US is going to get to deploy here. Because the other option is to declare war on the US ourselves, which expends one of our flags and puts us in a risky position. This is our plan. It may not hold out. Things may fall in a different order than we think they're going to, and maybe we do end up declaring war on the US. But I think it's unlikely. We don't particularly need either of these, so we kept an offensive aside. These extra markers mean that we can go to total war and get a larger force than maybe the US has, at least for a while. Britain. Britain does not need their upgrades. They've got a full boat of stuff. Is that a big deal? I don't know, but offensives seem very valuable. Might be able to knock Germany out of the war. That'll do us a lot of good, I think. Get rid of fascist cubes up here and stuff like that. Okay. Our final is the Germans themselves. The poor Germans, their biggest thing we already talked about. Upgrade the tank. They don't have much else. They get a free offensive and the flag. They paid for upgrading the tank. It's only a 2-pointer, so they got it exactly. They didn't get anything additional. Otherwise, they could have taken, I guess, a sub And that might actually serve some purpose. I don't see the logistics unit serving a purpose. We're not going to be going and plowing into Russia this game, even though we thought we were, and that's why we bought it originally. The Japanese might want to deploy theirs to help them get into China deeper. Putting one here, for example, gets them access to being in supply through all of those, because then they can trace supply. Well, they can already trace supply through here. Interesting. That's not a bad location, actually. But anyway, that's where we is. Wish I had more Japanese infantry at this point, but I don't. Oh, I do. I have one on the track. And all the rest of the counters go in the cup. And we start the war. And it's going to start with a bunch of these, as always. I mean, every turn, basically there's a lot of trumping that's going on because people are putting the things they want to do right away up there. And so the chit cup doesn't get used for those first actions. But once the initial planning's done, then you do have to rely on fate quite a bit. Thing to note, the chit cup is pretty damn full. And this is not full-on war yet, right? I mean, most people, there's only one country at total war, and that's puny little Italy. So it gives you an idea. The early turns don't have as many chits. That means not as much is happening. Although there's more political stuff going on, so flags get generated a little bit more. As you get into the main war, there's more chits in there, so I think the turns start taking longer. Although sometimes the decisions are fairly easy. Like, attacks are pretty easy to figure out what you want to do. What's hard to do, and what really starts cycling into the AP land, is, hey, how do I fucking get where I need to go? How do I get to war if that's what I need to do? This turn or next turn, how do I engineer that? And that's the hardest fucking part of this game, for me at least. It's really too complicated, I think. It's a matter of, in order to, you come up with a broad strategy. In order to effectuate it, you have to put more thinking and effort in, at least in these first plays, and probably in most plays, than I feel comfortable. And certainly, I feel like I should be able to, largely in these games, drive broad strategy from, at least from someone. But in this game, it's very, very hard to do. The Germans and Italians were never really able to get what they wanted going, and they kind of accidentally ended up being a friendly Hitler. The Japanese, I think they did more or less what they wanted to do, keeping the naval treaty in play as long as possible. They would have liked the extra resource from Java. The U.S. did what it wanted to do in terms of getting rid of the trade agreement, but since then they've been handcuffed. Both the Western Allies and the Soviets have wanted a war with Germany. They haven't been able to manage it. They haven't been able to push it out. Now, the Axis can get a war whenever the fuck they want, basically, as long as they have any kind of offensive markers left. But somehow I fell into that. I think it was the very offensive Russian position. I fell into a situation where Germany felt handcuffed. They couldn't really do what they wanted to do. They wanted to be, I think, a little bit more expansionist than they were. I'm not sure. I'm trying to remember what I thought. I know that I was thinking, well, you can probably get away with it with the Axis, with the European Axis. Having seen what happened with Japan, I felt like I should be doing the strike at some point with Japan, but the U.S. buildup was so much that surprise attack just never looked appealing once, there was kind of this trigger point between, geez, it's not worth it. I don't want to bring the U.S. in the war too early. And I mean, they're still at rearmament, I don't want to void the naval treaty until they get up to mobilization at least. And they never got there. But instead, they ended up with a mighty carrier force that matches mine. And I can't get much to them. I guess I could put my logistics unit here and get 2 carriers in there, that's a possible situation. So again, it might be able to do something interesting. The reason you're normally able to only go 2 spaces, but you can extend the range of air and naval units at a penalty on the combat. I won't be able to get any air forces in there, but you know, this is more U.S. forces than I want to face in the Hawaiian Islands. That's what it kind of comes down to. I think it's pretty tough for a Pearl Harbor scenario to come about in this game. Because the U.S. isn't able to really provide so one thing that the U.S. did pre-war, before entering as a belligerent to the Germans, is they did provide some support for Lend-Lease. In terms, they occupied Iceland before the war. You can't do that in this game. You have to be belligerent to go occupy Iceland, for example. Unless I'm mistaken about something, but I believe they occupied it before they went to war with Germany. That's not allowed. The Brits can do it, but, you know, and maybe they want to, but it's a slightly different situation. I also don't like the fact that very aggressive Western allies still have the U.S. kind of on board. It doesn't really hurt the U.S. So you could end up with a situation. WIF has kind of like, you know, penalties, things the Allies do penalize U.S. entry. And I think that's a more subtly crafted design than this. Of course, how would you do that? Because it is really a 3-player game and the U.S. is one of the players, and you'd have to set another layer of special rules to indicate that the U.S. isn't really happy with some of the violent measures. But there's no counteracting effort. So like Germany can't use its flags against non-belligerents to maybe cancel out their flags or something like that. That would be a mechanism that would allow, so if the Western allies, for example, were doing nasty, nasty things, which are hard for them to do in this compared to in some of the other games. But if they're doing nasty things, like going in and invading Norway, which they did, that should presumably actually piss the U.S. off. The best effect is some kind of suppression effect on the U.S. Instead, you could give Germany more political actions, which might give them more, I mean, they do get more political actions. It might give them capability to, you know, swing some of the miners to their side. But what it's not going to give them is it's not going to give them the capability to reflect that dissatisfaction that the U.S. would have with really overly belligerent actions against minors. Concern in this game, timing can be kind of important in terms of the trumping. So the Axis is going to jump in and say, I'm going to trump with Italy. I want to get my stability up. Well, the U.S. wants to get its in before that, so they're going to also try to trump in. What is it they want to do? They don't want to. No. Russia, declaration of war at this point? Germany has its tank upgrade in the way, so yeah, we'll trump in as well. Japan, do they want to trump into that? Well, that infantry is important to us. Yes, we do. Because we don't want to get an offensive until we get it. We got to worry a little bit because Japan's actually in danger. Not right away, but if the U.S. deploys here, takes the East China Sea, they can invade Japan. So not having infantry in Japan may end up as a problem, but there's a risk to what I've got in my deployment in that I could lose Manchuria, Chahar, Hubei, and maybe I can gain things. Well, and make it harder for victory points to be taken away from me. I also, though, want to worry about getting my supplies down there even more. So I'm not sure where we're going. I'm not sure why I deployed that infantry in there, but I definitely want it. The Brits, do they want to jump in over the US? Well, no. I don't believe so. I think I'd rather have the US action than the British action. The German action, though, yeah, we need this. But do we? Are we worried about the US action? Yeah, we want to clear this because it'll give us room to put a flag or something else that we might gain. So let's upgrade our tank. We want to make sure the French don't get in there before. Yeah, it brings us to the next. What about the British offensive? You know, that would be useful to get us into position for possibly even an invasion into the Baltic Sea. Boy, that could cause some issues. Can we station there? We cannot. Yeah, we can station there once we get Denmark and or Sweden, whatever. Okay. Do we want to do that, or do we want the U.S. action? The U.S. doesn't want to do its action, so yes, we want to do ours. So the Brits are going to pluck their offensive kit. We only get 2 actions off of it. 2 actions is what's needed for an invasion. We will do an invasion. We're going to drop both tanks in, why not? And we will support it with air power. No one can really do anything about this. This is going to provoke Russia, though, which might not be great. The Brits get 3 dice because they have air support. The Germans get 1 die. And I can't air support or anything here. And the Brits win and are successful. That takes a cube away from Germany. There's no resource here, so there's nothing really at stake in terms of flags or anything like that. But it does take away a German victory point, an Axis victory point. It gives us a democracy and a British victory point. Now the U.S. can't jump in. That's okay. Oh, I forgot about poor France, but they're not going to get an early option. Japanese, they'll hold off. Okay, so that gets us. Il Duce is going to make his attempt to improve the stability of Italia. And he is successful. Okay. And so I would have gladly taken the Il Duce before the German trigger, because it's harder to get if nobody else wanted to trump in. That's why I say order might be important. Usually you can just go from the top or whatever, but anybody can chime in at any time. There's no real pulsing there. It's just some people have trump abilities, which is a different thing. So there's timing issues in good old Pax Britannica, where everybody's kind of acting at the same time and nobody's trumping in, and it behooves everyone to wait as long as they can to do things in general. Here, there's timing issues, but there's a resolution to it, so it doesn't have any problems like that. Russians want to kick off their declaration of war. Unless Japan wants to do something. Oh, Russian flag in the cup. Yeah. Japan will allow them. Yeah. Japan's going to take their action. There are events that clear the action there. Ooh, we're in war now. I don't know if we did this right last time. I may have been using the peace table after the war started, which I should not have done. I am really afraid of losing Japan, but could wipe out the GMD there. Afraid of losing victory points too. We will place there for now. Okay. And we used this one, so we could actually leave that space without it being a problem. All right, where are we? Now Russia can declare war. Maybe. They only get 2 dice, because that's their effectiveness, at -1, because they're in military stance, but they've got +2. So they net out at +1. And they succeed. They're declaring war on Germany. That is going to give Germany and Italy flags. Oh, look, El Duce comes back. Italy definitely wants its flag here, I think. Germany, I'm not so sure. And stuff happens. Russia's going to have to launch their single offensive. Actually, do we want to hit... Do we want to hit the big German force, or do we want to hit the Italians, who look weaker? Maybe we'll hit the Italians instead. Doesn't really make a difference in terms of what our activity is. But we're going to get some additional offensives. 1, 2. I think that's all we get for factories. Do we want to put an offensive in here? Sure. That'll give us some more opportunity. The German flag, I really don't know. I'm trying to think what Germany's going to do with a flag. They could go up to more severe mobilization, which could be very valuable. More valuable. The offensives, I don't think I really need in reserve. Most chits that I'm going to pull, I'm going to play. This could be useful. It could also be useful for getting my stability up, which maybe is even more important. Okay. And I pulled those, I pulled that. All right, on with the actual attack. Okay, so we're gonna drive in with both of these because our flank is secured over here. We're gonna send some air support in. We have no bonuses. The Italians will send a second air support in to make it unlikely. And both sides get 2 dice for this. The Russians do not have a penalty in military actions. We're in global war already. And the Italians get a 5-3. That's going to kill the Russian airplane. So the Italians will have air power. Okay. 2 dice each. Italians have air power. There's no tank advantage here. The Italians have +1. Yeah, this is why we didn't want to go in here, I guess. The Italians have +1 due to the terrain. Or do the Russians have -1? Doesn't really matter. Okay, so it's 7-4. That's a Russian defeat. But we're not going to take a loss. We're going to take a retreat instead. And that's what we see. But we're at war. And that's the important part. All right. Let me swap batteries. Fired off propaganda, trying to clean up their stability problem. It didn't get cleaned. That puts us to Russia. They could do another offensive again. I want to hold it in reserve. I have plenty of them, and I'll do them when they come up. But right now, this didn't work very well. I could shift defensively, but I'm not that worried about Italy. These guys here are prepared to go in, but I wouldn't be in any terrible advantage right now. I'm willing to give them some time and see what plays out before I commit to firing off my offensive. The U.S. still doesn't want to do anything until we're deployed out here. So we're holding on ours. Il Duce, no reason to do the stability effect. Anything else? Hey, you know, maybe I just wanted that in the cup, but here's the thing. If I take a home front counter and it hurts me, this is a good time. This is a good chit to have in there. So good old France gets 1. and they throw another plane into the Ruhr. Not actually into the Ruhr, into the Ruhr region. And we have a Russian flag. What do I do with a Russian flag? I'm going to improve stability. Wouldn't want Russia to fall down to collapse. That would be painful at this point. We would miss the extra resource that we have there. No good there. Oh, these should have been gone. Goes there. And I hope that US one belongs where it is. I think it does. But, okay. US and Italy still don't want to do theirs. Russian offensive. Okay. Well, there's a lot we can do. A whole lot. I think we're going to charge into Silesia with this one. Because we're not going to have air. Oh, the Italians want this back there, I guess. I don't know. Doesn't make much difference. They won the battle, so they get to reposition. The Russians retreated. 2 German tanks go in, 2 German aircraft go in, or 2 Russian aircraft go in. A German aircraft goes in. We're going to take a +2 on this. We're hoping to do a lot of damage more than anything else. So 2 dice for each. That uses all of this chit up. 2 dice for each to start with. And this is the air attack. We're at +2 on the air attack. This is cool because I get +2 on the air and the land. It's always the bonus of augmenting an action. So you can blow the shit out of someone. All right, well, good thing we did that because the Germans would have gotten 3 of our planes otherwise. As it is, they only get 1. Now, if we stick around, we lose air advantage, so we're going to pull back to Poland and not take one of those hits. But now, the Germans get 3 dice, we get 2 dice. Neither side has land advantage, the armor advantage, but the Russians still have +2 on their dice, which could easily win them this. 5 to 4, it does. The Germans are going to take a hit because they couldn't even retreat all their forces safely. This is all one area here, and that means the Russians have to fall back. And we can't trigger a Russian offensive at this point. We may want to, which means if we get something like the German home front marker. Okay. Germany makes its stability check. It's the surrender check that I have to worry about this one. Okay. But I'm at -1 on all these dice. A 5, that's successful. Once you get to total war, you can no longer succeed at these. It's just a question of how badly they hurt you, which means you need flags more, and it's hard to stay on top of that issue. Okay, do the Russians want to drop another offensive here? Oh, this plane went back. We're going to hold. If we draw one, we'll be forced to, but we don't want to go in quite yet. A French offensive. France does not have a flag in place. I'm not sure that they want to do their offensive yet. They'd be facing the brunt of the German army. However, we're not in that terrible a position. We will hold off, put this down, and let the Russians do their offensive first, maybe. And this is the same reason the Russians don't want to do theirs. Both sides are looking to attrition the German forces. We get a French flag. What the hell can I do with a French flag? I cannot improve this, but I can try to go to total war. That makes me more susceptible to some things, but what the hell? It's not going to work anyway, right? And this is the one reason not to have kept an offensive, is that I could have a flag there instead for after the home front comes up. So we're just 1 die Oh, it's automatic. We don't have to roll a die. Let me make sure all of these are in the right place. Yeah. Okay. So we go up to total war. That's going to give us 3 more units and a bunch of additional offensives. Well, 2 more offensives. We could get a 3rd one, but we don't have room for. No, we don't have any offensives available. Shit. This may not be the best time to do this. Oh, gosh. We really didn't want to hold that flag. This is our only flag. Yeah, we want to do it to get the troops up there, I guess. We could do diplomacy. Yeah, what about that? What about diplomacy? Where could we do it? We could do it on Portugal. That's our most likely. Get us a token, a victory point, you know. That might not be bad. We could do it on Norway. That might not be terrible. That's not going to piss anyone off. What's the birds? Doesn't connect. That's a separate sea. Norway would be more likely to survive. I want the offensives from my total war. I'm hoping maybe I'll get a flag somewhere other way. I don't know how. That is successful. French, yeah, they have the German victory point. And democracy grows 1 more as Norway joins the alliance. Crisis. Okay. Now, I know we didn't roll on this before. I suspect we should have. We're on this table. This happens even in limited war. It doesn't have to be a global war. Anytime when there's major power belligerence, from then on, you have this. And 3-1 Chinese resistance. Powers with a Cuban and ungarrisoned Chinese country. Oh, sucks for the Japanese. With no Chinese armies must make a roll. Okay, well, 2 dice for effectiveness rolls. Who be? That's the only one. And we hold it. Good enough. Anybody could go. The French don't have a flag in the pile, so the answer is no one goes. And we get a Russian offensive. All right. In we go. Again. I don't know if this makes sense. We send... You know what? Yeah, we send it all in. We're going to do the +2 offensive again. The Germans are going to commit another plane. 2 dice to 2 dice. The Germans win twice. This means the Russians can retreat to reduce their losses, but they lose another air factor. There's no triumph. Even if they had wiped it out, even if they had done more damage. The Germans get an extra die, but the Russians are still at +2 to their dice from this incredibly planned offensive. And they get a 6 to a German 5. The Germans will take another hit. We will take it on our infantry so that we get to keep... Oh! Russians had tank advantage. Hold on. Germans only got 2 dice. Re-roll them. Whatever effect is whatever effect. Yeah, it's the same thing. We will take this because the infantry doesn't really do us any good. We still don't want to retreat from Silesia, I don't believe. We don't have... We could safely fly 2 spaces away. No, support is only 1 space. Extended range. Only if I had done an extended range operation. But I do repulse the Russians again. And that was everything there. Anyone want to do something? How do the French feel? French don't feel like they want to do their offensive. Okay. Another chit. And it looks like we're going to break this one into two videos, actually. Just because I babbled for so long. All right, an Italian offensive chit. Shit. We just got problems everywhere. We could go into Romania quite nicely. Russia's a hard nut to take out. We could go into Provence, even better. That looks more appealing. I'm going to use all three, so +2 attack, and I'm going to drive the tank, the infantry, and a plane in. The French have no air power to support them. The English don't have air power here. So, the Italians get an extra die for air power. Nobody gets armor bonus because it's yucky terrain. And the Italians are a +2, the French are a +1 for the terrain. So it's a net +1. Well, it's not. Okay, so the Italians roll an 8 to a 3 for the French. They're going to take 2 losses. 2 losses wipes us out, so we're going to reduce that by 1. We will fall back, geez, I don't know. Let's go back to Lorraine to help defend it. Not a triumph, however. Italy gets a cube in Lorraine. The fascists get another victory point. The Italians get a victory point. France loses a victory point. Democracy loses a victory point. Italy gains a flag, which we'll throw in the cup. This is how you gain flags. You take victory point spaces. And France has to make a stability check with 1 die. Luckily, they're stable. They don't have any penalties on it. It's not the home front check. But down they go. Well, one more thing has to be done. The French fleet has to reposition. Legitimately, one of the ships has to reposition to North Africa because it's within range. Outside of that, we have to go to the closest. Well, actually, we can drop that over in Gibraltar. But yeah, not ideal. Gibraltar's a base. Yeah, Gibraltar's a base, but it's in Spain. The English will allow the French fleet in there, obviously. So, who was that? That was mighty Italy's go. So they're not able to trump. And who is able to trump? Do they want to? France is scared now. I think the answer is no one. Well, France could use their offensive. They have a pretty decent shot of actually taking Berlin, which could cause some pain to Germany, no question. That causes 2 stability checks, and it's worth 2 victory points. The Italians... Yeah, the Italians want to stay as they are. There's no invasion threat right now. I think the French will put off. There can't be a lot of Italian offensives in the cup. There just aren't that many. They only have 4, so there's 2 more. Civil War time. Now, this is a place where we kind of cheated. The Hungarian Civil War, which is ongoing, and the Greek Civil Wars. Those are the ones I kind of question whether they should have happened. Let's take a look at them. The French get to pick the order. They'll do the Hungarians first. It really doesn't matter. And honestly, the only thing that matters is, I think, if one side wins or loses. So that Civil War clears itself up. The Greek Civil War, nobody's involved in these, so the only question is there still an opportunity? That Civil War, I think, is ongoing because neither has aid markers, and I think the only result is all the aid markers are removed. So, and then for the Chinese, we have the same number for both, which means the GMD gets to expand first. There's nowhere they can expand to. They're not allowed to go into a place with a cube. So the only way to get the cubes is off random events, which means the communists get a chance to expand here, but they only have a 1. And I believe no, they only use 1 die. That's what it is. And they do not get anywhere. So that's the end of the Civil War. We'll do at least one more action here. This is going. Does anyone want a Trump? The answer is still no. The Brits. The Brits have their offensive. Oh, fuck. Yeah, the Italians were at total war. The Russians were not, so they should not have had +2. They should have only had +1 for those attacks. Fuck me. I'm used to being in total war at, you know, where the war is so total. Okay, so the French. Yeah, I mean, this game is just, my playthrough is just replete with mistakes, but that's life. I think that's just a way, I think every time that I play this, this is going to be a problem. Now, opposed, at least I have other people kind of checking me to make sure that the things that I'm calling are correct. But it's also more important to get the game playing and flowing than spend the entire time, every time, flipping through the rule book to see if you have everything right. I gotta tell you, it's a lot harder to get everything right in this game and in Axis Empires and I don't know, John Company maybe, than it is in something like WIF. I'm not saying that I get everything right in WIF, but usually most of the standard play is working perfectly fine in a game like that. But here, so much of it is special case issues that I feel like the whole game is getting perverted by a mistake here, a mistake there, to a massive degree. Where the fuck am I? I don't know. I don't even fucking remember where I am. I think I'm on a draw after the crisis. And why don't we leave it there? I'll load this up, and yes, it's been an hour and a half. And I don't know what we'll call this. 48A? No, 46A. Because 2-year turns, I can't do that. I guess I could call it 45 and put 46 in next time. We'll do that.